You are listening to Making It, the path to beauty industry greatness with Canvas Me, where we go behind the scenes to explore the human side of beauty professionals, learn how they found balance in their lives, overcame obstacles, and created communities that transcend the ordinary. Hosted by Canvas Me co-founders Jen and Matt Martinelli alongside Canvas Me directors April and Megan, Making It is your guide to navigating the ever-evolving world of beauty.
Welcome to Making It. I'm April, and today we're honored to have Molly Gooding, an industry professional who wears many hats, like so many of us do. Not only is she a hairstylist and an industry recruiter, but she's also a passionate mental health advocate. Molly walks us through her journey of overcoming resistance to enter the industry, and she opens up about mental health challenges she faced during COVID, emphasizing how isolation reshaped her life into a dedicated mental health advocate and a strong message that we are not alone in this journey. Recognizing the crucial importance of mental health in our field, we've partnered with NAMI and HeadUp, providing exclusive resources and webinars for our Canvas Me community listed below. Well, Molly, we're super excited to have you on here. So do you feel like you've made it?
I feel like I'm on my way. I am not quite there yet, but I feel like I'm on my way to getting there.
That I feel like that I totally understand that answer for sure. So Molly, you and I share some similar backgrounds of how we got into the industry. And I find it really funny that you and I both actually resisted and have family members that, basically we both grew up in the industry and we both didn't want to get into it. Do you want to share a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So I was born in a really small town in northern Ohio, and our family was, of course, small town, everybody knows everybody. So my grandmother and her daughter had their own hair salon. That was kind of the main one in our hometown. And her mother was also a stylist, but she just did stuff from home. So I grew up in my grandma and my aunt's shop and never really had any interest in it. I wanted to go off to college and have that whole experience, but I also knew, I was watching them day in and day out, and I kind of was able to pick up on things and, just kind of learn as a young kid, I guess. So yeah.
For sure. So my mother and my grandmother were both hairstylists too. So I lived and breathed the hair salon all my life. Like every summer, kids would go to camp. I went to the salon, folded towels, sorted perm rods. I mean, I don't know how many roller sets I saw. And so for me, it was just like, I don't know if this is not what I want to do because I lived it. It was my whole childhood. And funny story for me, when I was 18 years old, my mother actually offered me to take over her salon. My grandmother was thinking about retiring, and it was with a full clientele. And me as a young, had a little bit of an attitude. And I was like, why do I want to do exactly what my mother and my grandmother did? So it's kind of funny that fast forward, I ended up in the industry myself. So I totally understand. But it sounds like you have way more in your bloodstream than I do. The fact that you have a number of family members.
Yeah. I have my cousin, his wife is a hairstylist. My sister-in-law is also in the industry, and my niece is finishing a VOTEC school, essentially. Yeah. So she's 16 and she'll be done and ready to go by the time she graduates high school, and she's already killing it. So she's going to be way better than I am.
So how did you actually end up in the industry? That is kind of your upbringing. And so you wanted to go to college. Yeah.
So I, to make a really long story short, because there's a lot of turns that I took along the way, but I wanted to move away from the small town. So I moved directly to Chicago, Illinois, like the day after I walked and got my diploma. Moved to Chicago, went to fashion school, lasted about 9 months, came home incredibly homesick, went to Kent State University. I didn't realize that they frowned upon excessive drinking as a college student. I thought that was a part of the curriculum. So, I figured, why not? But so once I was done with Kent State, my mom was like, you're either moving home and working, or we need to start looking into this, because it was always kind of an ongoing joke of, you're going to go to hair school, you're going to come back and take over the shop, which, wasn't ever a goal of mine to move back home to do it. But I always had in the back of my head, maybe, but we'll see. So I didn't really want to move home and start working right away. So I just sort of, to appease my mom, did a couple of tours for, Paul Mitchell and Aveda schools and all the big names. And I thought, you know what, why not? Like, if this is going to give me skills and a trade that I can fall back on, then let's just see how this goes. So I did it. And 14 years later, here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So at one point, did you recognize that you actually kind of had a passion for it? Was it in school? Was it after you graduated?
I would say after I graduated.
Okay.
And probably once I got into the salon that I'm in now, because the salon that I originally started at, as soon as I got my license, I walked into the salon that I'm currently at. She was the very first woman that I worked for. Was there for about 3 years, and then we had moved away and we just moved back. So I'm working for her again. But that was where I really fell in love with the whole atmosphere of, the customer service and, the talent that I was surrounded by. These girls were just amazing, almost mesmerizing to watch doing their work. So I think that's really where I fell in love with it, to be honest.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. So later on in my career, I ended up managing salons. So I actually not that talented behind the chair. So I actually never went to school for hair.
Yeah.
But yeah. The best way I can describe it is salons feel like home. Mm-hmm. And it just feels so familiar that I understand. I love kind of the fast pace, kind of a little bit of juggling chaos, and just the creative side of it. I love watching talented professionals like do new things. And I was always like, I'm a guinea pig. Do you want to color my hair today? Like,
yeah. So it's fun to be the guinea pig.
Yes. So take us through a little bit of that journey and to kind of like, where you are today.
So my journey is an interesting one. Like I said, I was behind the chair, 14 years ago. My boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, we were moving to Pittsburgh for his job. And while we were out there, we got married and had our first baby. We then packed up and moved to South Carolina for a couple of years. And then, of course, COVID hit. So it was like a shock to everybody's world, I think.
For sure.
Yeah. So we're just kind of trying to make it through all of that. We also had our second son in the meantime. And with our second son, he was interesting. He was born with this undiagnosed health issue. We were patients with St. Jude for years. We're now patients with Nationwide Children's here in Columbus. And nobody can still figure out kind of what his issues are, but aside from that, he's doing great. Very ornery, very energetic for being anemic and, had all these underlying conditions. So, we were just trying to make it through those kind of things. But I think in the process of being on lockdown, having, a sick child, my husband travels for his work. He's in sales. I was currently not working at that point. And I think I hit my breaking point. I think everybody has that moment where they just can't take anymore. So I did end up going to the hospital, and I just thought I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be here. There's no purpose for me to be here. And it was, just like this cloak that kind of came over me. And I've dealt with depression and anxiety throughout my whole life, but this was very different. So I ended up in the hospital for a couple days, and then have been kind of on that journey now ever since that happened.
For sure. And Molly, I appreciate you sharing this side of your story, because I feel like so many people can resonate this, that they don't talk about these side. COVID was incredibly hard, especially for this industry. We did not see this coming. This was supposed to be a foolproof industry that, no recession could stop us. Nothing could happen. Everybody still needs their haircut. And, this really kind of hit all of us in different ways, and more severe than others. But the one thing we had in common is we could never see that we would be shut down. And so, a lot of that isolation and, Zoom really doesn't belong really in the hairstylist world, right?
Yeah.
So it was nothing normal for the industry whatsoever. And so I appreciate you sharing that story, because, we're so happy to have you here and share that side, because I'm sure so many people can relate. So,
yeah. I've found that more people than what I thought can relate to it. And I had told you before, but I will share again. I'm in charge of recruitment and training. So I travel to all of the local schools and, give these presentations. And I had gone to this one school and I'm like, what do your girls want to see? What are they interested in? What do they need? And they're like, oh, they need more like business, more real life, kind of stuff. I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do here? What am I going to say? Because business is business, but you can't really just sit there and talk about that. I'm going to lose the crowd super quick. So I'm trying to think of maybe a more personal way to connect with them. So I had gotten on stage and there's probably 50 to 60 students sitting in front of me. And I prefaced before we even started, I said, I just want you guys to know that I'm probably going to ugly cry while I'm standing up here, but I'm going to give you my life story and you will understand why by the end of it, because it does tie back into our industry, because it's very parallel with what I'm seeing in the industry right now.
For sure. Oh my gosh. How was that moment when you were up on stage and you were about to give this presentation? I mean, take me through a little bit of like that. I'm feeling this like anxiety for you, and like, and also like the power that comes with it, right? Like you're about to tell a really moving story. Yeah.
Right. Well, so this was the first time that I had ever done this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had shared my story before, but with close friends, and close friends just knew my story because they've gone through it with me, really. But to share to a room of strangers, I thought, okay, I'm either going to flop. This is going to be really bad. So it's either going to be that, or I'm going to hit home with somebody. And if I can just strike that chord, even with one person, then I know that this was a success, because I know that when I hear other people talking about it, it makes me feel a little less alone, a little less like, oh my gosh, like I don't need to talk about this because no one else is feeling these things or thinking these things. So I thought, you know what, we're just going to go for it and see what happens.
Yes.
And we did good.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So at the end of that presentation, did you touch on at least one person?
I did. So when I was finished, I had about roughly like 8 to 10 girls, I want to say, that had stayed. We kind of chatted for a little bit, whether it was questions about where I work or, a thank you for sharing my story. And I am acutely aware that there are many people that have it far worse than I do. So I will never claim to have, the worst. I'm very lucky and very blessed in a lot of ways. But I think that there's like a prejudgment, I think, that happens because I'm standing up on stage and I'm dressed in like nice, business slacks and like heels and, my hair's done and the whole thing. And then I tell them, we had lived in a trailer park for a couple of years growing up and, just kind of going through the whole story. I think it kind of reset their expectation of like prejudging and, okay, this girl has more to her than what she looks like. And a couple of the girls at the end did comment on that, like, we weren't expecting the story to go the way that it did. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I wanted to share it. So
For
it
sure.
was good though. Yeah.
Yeah. And for sure, we want to see the human side of people. And I think you totally touched on that, is sometimes we have a total misconception about someone, right? And I think it's so powerful to be like, actually, no, here's who I am. And I think that we're all craving some of that authenticity and connection. And, with some of your own personal experiences, has it changed the way that you are behind the chair?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I would say I've always felt more in tune to whoever I'm, servicing that day, whoever's in my chair, regardless of if it's a young kid, an older, gentleman, the moms of our neighborhood, regardless of who it is. I have always felt like I've been able to just read the room a little bit more, and just kind of base my vibe off of what I'm getting from them. So, yeah.
And I think that that's so powerful, right? Because a lot of times, we can get so focused on what we're doing and we're just like in our zone. And, I think picking up on social cues of who's around us, I think says a lot of, having that emotional intelligence side. Right. And so would you have any advice to, any of our listeners that are behind the chair of, what to kind of recognize in social cues of clients or even, a fellow coworker, where you could recognize, are they struggling? Are they okay?
Yeah. I think it's just kind of like a cluster of multiple things, really, because it's no secret that we're all so attached to our phones, right? So I think being able to put those down and just sort of look around and see what's going on around you is probably the first thing that I would say. But just listening to listen and not listening to respond, I think is a big thing. And, I make sure that when I'm at work, I try to check in with at least one person a day, not just asking like, hey, how's your day? But like really standing there for a second being like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? And sometimes they just spill everything. And sometimes it's just as superficial as any other conversation could be in passing. But I think just really trying to keep in mind that, while we have our own things going on, so does everybody else in the room. So just keeping that in mind.
For sure. And I love that little touch base that you do, because I think that it's one of those things that's just so small, but it could really be, something that could really be impactful for that person for the day. It's just like, oh, Molly checked in on, okay. And maybe you don't even know how powerful that is. And that can be something. And even with clients, I have seen managing salons, clients come in and they have all different types of behaviors going on. And it's like, what's going on? Or maybe clients that are really short with staff, right? They're like cutting people off. They're like, you don't understand. And I remember, kind of taking some, of my employees, because that can leave you as a hairstylist in tears, right? What did I do wrong? And sometimes clients, and it's like, I've never seen this client like this before. And one of the things I used to train on was, recognize that you have no idea what they're going through. You have no idea if they just, had a almost like a road rage incident on the highway, before getting here, or, something happened, or there's family things going on that we just don't know the full story. And a lot of times this, behavior that's so unlike them is just a result of they don't know how to cope with whatever's going on. And so just to, proceed with compassion of, hey, I hear you. Is there something I can do? Or even just a like, hey, are you okay? you seem a little off today. And I think that that's so, so important because we can even take it. It's almost like that domino effect, right? Where it's like one action triggers our action and all of these things. And it's just recognizing that we're all under stress. We all have different places where we are. And it's so important to really kind of recognize those social cues. And like I said earlier, like, especially in this day, we're so distracted, our phones are going off. So it's like, oh, wait, should I look here? Emails, text messages, all those things. And then you also have the person in front of you. And so I do think that's such a great message of just staying engaged, completely engaged with that person and be in the moment with them. Yeah.
Yeah. It's huge.
It really is. I mean, I'm sure you have experienced in 14 years a wide range of stories along those lines of you were just like, do you look back even before COVID of like recognizing of like, oh, that time that client did that, maybe that was a sign of, I'm sure that there's things that you see now more than ever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And to be 100% honest, the main thing that I've noticed is just more anxiety, just general anxiety. Clients that I've done over the years that come in and, are relaxed and it's their turn to relax. Obviously, it's people look forward to their hair appointments. And you could feel their relaxation. And now their leg is bouncing the whole time. They're, fidgeting with whatever's in their hand, or they're on their phone scrolling. And it's almost like it rubs off on me. And me and my fellow stylists have actually all talked about this before, that the way that our salon is set up, we're almost in like our own little rooms, essentially.
Oh,
so it's
nice.
almost like a booth rental setup, but we're not booth rental.
Yes, you have a little more privacy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We've got a little more privacy and which is really awesome, but it feels like, you're with your client for however long that time frame is, and you almost just absorb whatever they're going through, which is part of, it's the ongoing joke. You're a psychologist or a shrink or a therapist who can also do hair. That's sort of like the ongoing joke, but there's a lot of truth to that because we listen, we hear everything from, dating to death to weddings to births of babies, like just the whole gamut. So it's definitely an emotional ride going from one client to the next. But when you have your own things going on too, and then you're absorbing everybody else's, it can be a little overwhelming sometimes.
For sure. Is there anything that you do during the day to kind of help? Like, let's say you had a client that was in your chair for a couple of hours, that just kind of that energy you just felt like absorbing. Is there any tips or tricks that you do to kind of help reset you for the next client?
It depends on who it is.
Okay.
I would say that there are different people that I have to respond differently to.
Sure.
But sometimes it's really just going in the back and, commiserating with like our fellow employees, because we all have them and we all know what we're going through with these, with the ones that are more difficult. But we also try to remember maybe there's something going on at home. Maybe they just got devastating news. Maybe they're stressed over bills, like just trying to remember all those things. I really try to like make sure that I'm staying in that mind frame when it is somebody that's a little more difficult, but usually just stepping away, just having that separation is a good start. But yeah, nothing like specific necessarily, but yeah.
And I think even just that moment away, right? Because sometimes the day can get away from us where you're literally back to back to back to back and you're literally saying goodbye to one as you're saying hello to another one. And so, even I think that is just such a key of like, even if they're sitting out front, there's no harm in just being like, hey, I'll be with you in just 2 minutes. And you go in the back and you do exactly what you just said. Just take a moment just so you can reset and come back out for the next. And I think that is just, a lot of people who are, kind of like customers, they don't really see that side, right? They don't see that side. They just see that you get to play with hair all day. So, Well,
Yeah.
awesome. So, Molly, I truly appreciate having you. So, what is your purpose?
So my purpose kind of ties back into, your original question, with, do I feel like I've made it? And part of me feels like I'm just sort of starting my journey in a way. But my purpose, I think, is to, share my story. But at the same time, I also want to mention that I do feel like there is this influx of everybody wanting to share their stories, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't want people to be like, oh, here we go, here's another story, let's move on. But I truly feel like if I can share my story and just some experiences that I've gone through, because some of them are very, kind of niche sort of things. And if I touch base with anybody on that level, then I feel like I've done my job. So I would say that that's probably my main purpose at this point. Just trying to make people feel less alone, to be honest. So,
And I think that that's an incredible message because we are all about finding our place of belonging, our people. And I think it's huge to really have that message out there of that you're not alone. Right. And we're all going through these things and, shedding some light onto your story, is really key to letting people be able to hear that, oh my goodness, I do resonate with Molly, or maybe somebody else listening has grown up in the beauty industry like us and we were not thinking we wanted to be in the industry. Or, somebody really struggled with COVID and got to, a place where, mental health really was at the kind of a point in their life that was really challenging. And coming out on the other side and then becoming a mental health advocate. I think that that's remarkable. I mean, it's incredibly inspiring that you were able to get up on stage and tell your story. And even if you ugly cried, it was an incredible... But it shows the human side of your story, and that is what's so important of everything. And we so appreciate you. And
well, I appreciate you having me.
Yes. Well, any last tips or tricks you would like to share?
Oh gosh, oh my goodness. Not really. Just to keep learning, keep checking in on yourself, keep going. Because we're coming off of this whole phase of sort of being very complacent. So just as long as we just keep plugging away, getting up every day, and just keep going for it, then that's really the most important part.
Well, I think that's perfect. Thank you so much, Molly. We truly appreciate you. And
Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Making It, the path to beauty industry greatness with Canvas Me. Our mission is to give you a voice, help you find your place of belonging, and empower you to thrive in this beautiful industry. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights that will fuel your own journey in your career. Head over to canvasme.com and unlock the next chapter of your beauty journey. Create your portfolio, showcase your unique talents, and connect with a community that understands and celebrates your story. Subscribe to Making It for more inspiring stories, and let's continue making it together.